In this video, we're going to go over the Python package of arrow because it makes dealing with dates and times a lot easier than what it really is. It also helps you manage your naive and time zone aware date times almost seamlessly, because in recent versions of Django, you need to make sure you have everything in time zone aware date times, and arrow just does that automatically. To get started, we need to install arrow. We just do a simple pip install arrow. And then from there, let's just jump into our shell to give an example of how to actually use arrow. If we'll import it, and we'll do a now equals arrow.now. This will give you a current time depending on whether you set to use a time zone or not. You can use UTC now to get the current UTC time, which is my recommendation, and then you can shift to the correct time zone later. If we get the type of this object, you'll see that it's an arrow object, so it actually won't be very useful inside of Django. We need a datetime object. But if we'll do now.datetime, it returns a time zone aware datetime object of our UTC time. If we want to adjust the date based on the time zone, we can actually do now.to using our arrow object and saying we want to move this time to, say, Eastern time, or we want to move this current time to the time in Japan. The arrow object also gives you other convenient methods similar to datetime, so you can get the day, the month, and the year respectively. Well, you can do that with hours and seconds and minutes as well. The other fun part to arrow is it gives you a humanized method. So if you ever see those things where it says this happened 2 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, 1 hour ago, arrow does that as well. If you just print out the now.humanize, you get 2 minutes ago. It also does localization as well. So if we do print now.humanize and we give it a locale of JA for Japanese, then it says 2 minutes ago, basically in Japanese using the kanji. So we'll look at our current now, and let's say we want to change the hour that it says. We just do now.replace hour equals 2, and it changes it from 1:26 to be 2:26. And note, it doesn't actually change the current object, it just returns a new object with that new time. So if we'll do hour equals 2 and minute equals 40, it changes it to 2:40. We can also shift time forward and backwards based on our current object with the replace method. If we'll do now.replace hour equals +3, notice it actually writes it down as 3:26 instead of what we would have expected as potentially being 4:26. This is good to note because you can drive yourself crazy if you just write down hour. If you do the replace and use hours, plural, then it'll actually do the proper shifting. And so it goes to 4:26. This also works with weeks. So if we add 4 weeks, then you notice it goes into the end of November. This also works in a negative context. So if we'll do a negative 2 weeks, you'll see it goes back earlier into October. The next thing we want to look at is you can also get spans. You can get time spans. So oftentimes you might want to do a range lookup of a created date on an object in Django. But in order to do that, you need the beginning and end of a time. So if you do now.span hour, it'll give you the beginning of this hour and the end of this current hour, and it returns it into tuple, so you can do some sort of tuple unpacking and do the same thing again, and you'll see start and end are both the same as they were above. They're just populated into separate variables. We can do this based on the day, and you'll see it gets the beginning of our day and the end of our current day. And then let's say we want to get the span of the hours 5 hours from now. We can just do replace hours plus 5 and the span of the hour. So we can chain these together to get spans of future or past dates. Next, let's say we want to get the beginning of this month. We can do now.floor until we want to get the floor of the month, and it gives you the beginning of this month. Now let's say we want to look up something from the previous month. We can get the start time is last month, so we go back 1 month and then we get the floor. And then we want the end of last month, so we go back 1 month using our replace, and then we want to get the ceiling of month, and that'll give us our end time of the last moment of last month. We could have easily done a -1 month and then done span based on the month, but I just wanted to go ahead and show you the floor and ceiling methods. And then again, we can do it with 2 months as well. Finally, let's say we want to get a little ambitious and we want to run a report to get an idea of something that's going on, or we need to generate a data based over a specific amount of time. So for that, let's say we want to go 1 year ago. And we want to get a span for the beginning of each month for the last 12 months. And we're going to do something with that. So we would do a for in arrow.arrow.span range. So we're going to get a span of 1 month, and we're going to get a range starting from 12 months ago to now. And then we'll go ahead and print R, and we'll see we get a list of tuples. Let's go ahead and modify this, and we'll actually do something useful with it. And we'll do a created start and created end for our tuple unpacking. And let's go ahead and print out the total tasks that have existed based on their created date in the range of the created start and the created date. And we'll print out the total count. The thing to note is we're using the created property on the model, and we're using _ range to say, hey, we're going to start here and end here. So we don't have to do some funny greater than, less than things with created. And we're also using created _start.datetime, created _end.datetime, because we need the datetime objects, because Django doesn't know how to handle arrow object. And then finally, we're going to print out the total for that month. We're going to do this 12 times, one for each month. So we let that run, we see it's nothing, and then in this past month, we've had 7 new tasks. And that's really it. There are several more things that you can do with Arrow. They have their own formatting system so that you can output dates and times. It's easy to convert date times into an Arrow object using strings or using a datetime object itself, so you can do manipulation and then push it back out to date time. I really recommend you take a look at the documentation to get an understanding of what's going on. Beyond what I've shown you here, this is a great introduction into doing the manipulation that you can with date times and how easy it really is to use Arrow. I've been using it for 8 months to a year now, and I don't even bother trying to do anything with Python's datetime module anymore unless I absolutely have to.